Hi everyone, we are at Escape the Rat Race 33. I'm with John Williams. Hi John.
Hi Christian.
And we are just about to get started on tonight's event. Really looking forward to it. John, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
And we're talking about how to start a business with zero competition and how to get started in 30 days rather than putting it off for another day when you've got more time.
Yeah, and you've got plenty of experience doing this with hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Over 1,000 people have been through a process that I'm going to describe tonight, yeah.
Yeah, and of course in your two best-selling books.
Yep, Screw Let's Play and Screw Break Free. You can see a bit of a theme in those titles.
Yeah, so you're going to be pulling out some of those ideas.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really interactive session tonight. So should we get going?
Yeah,
let's go.
So that's how you get a standing ovation. You can sit down now, it's okay. Thank you, Christian. So this is about how to create a business with zero competition and get started in 30 days. I don't like it when people hang around waiting for the perfect time to get started. I want you to be able to start straight away. So that's what it's about tonight. And I'll stay out the way of the projector. Was I in the way of the projector? Yeah. So just to give my qualifications on this subject, I've done this a couple of times where I created things which are really were top of their genre. So one of them was a book, Screw Let's Play. I've got a copy here actually. And this came out in 2010. It went into a top 20 on W.H. Smith's and became an Amazon bestseller. The week it came out, it was named a Buzz Book of the Summer by the Sunday Times. That led to a 2-page feature in the main Times newspaper. Off the back of that, I built an email list of 17,000 followers who follow the kind of things I'm doing. And I started an event called Scanners Night, for which there was really no competition. It was an event for people with lots of ideas who find it difficult to choose and are good at starting things, not very good at finishing. Does anyone relate to that thing? So yeah, a few are here. So that ran for 6 years. We used to have 80 people turning up, and it would be in the press. And I also invented a thing called the 30-day challenge, where people started a business in 30 days. We had up to 300 people around the world doing it at once. Had our own app to make it work, and that again has had no kind of parallels. There's nothing else quite like that still out there. Now I run a thing called the Pioneer Program, which is all about this subject, how to create a business with no competition. And on Monday I'm starting a course with a literary agent on how to write a best-selling non-fiction book. So these are the kind of things I do, and the things I've managed to, sometimes without knowing how I was doing it, create that seemed to have no competition, immediately became top of their category, and generated a lot of natural press without me even hiring a PR person. Oh, and also because a lot of the business is online, I can run it from anywhere. So I went to Portugal and hung out with Christian for a few weeks, and I've been to Bali a few times for a month or two at a time. This is me working on my second book while eating chips. It's very healthy. Sitting by the pool. So all these things are possible if you want to engineer that. You know, these are the kind of things that Christian talks about all the time. So how do we do that? So I've got 3 things that are really important if you want to follow this process. And the first thing is you need to do something new, because when you do something new, you have the chance to create something that has no competition. And that means you're immediately the go-to person for what it is you've defined. But how do you do that? And how do you do that without it being an incredible risk? Well, this is about daring to stand out and to be a pioneer. So it's really a bad time to try and create a vanilla business. I used to use Tesco's as an example. When I talked about starting a business, I always said, oh, you should niche and you should do something special. And then I go, maybe if you're Tesco's, you can get away with it and you'll be fine. Actually, Tesco's shares have tanked recently. And what's happened is that even Tesco's, with the might of all the money they can spend on marketing, are having a bad time, because what's happened is the market's fragmented, and people are either going to, you know, the local deli, like the de Beauvoir deli near me, stratospherically expensive, the food's amazing, it's full of hipsters, it's a great place, or they're going to Aldi and they're going to Lidl. So the middle of the market is disappearing, and that's happening kind of in everything. Every market is fragmenting. And so if you go and you try and create something very vanilla, if you try and create something that's basically just another business in the category of whatever it might be, or another book in that category, you're going to have a really hard time. Instead, you should create a whole new category of business. And then you'll immediately be number 1. And in fact, you will be what's called in the book Play Bigger, which is really good, category king. And when you do that, the person that's immediately top of a category, of a kind of business, who's the name you think of, when you think of that type of business, is the person that gets 80 to 90% of all the money and all the opportunities. So how do you do that? Does that sound appealing, by the way? Okay, good. How do you do that? Because this sounds like something that's a little bit too good to be true. Well, part of it is to do what I call super niching. That means to be willing to be really, really specific about what you're doing and for whom. And Seth Godin, who's heard of Seth Godin? He's a great guy. He's written about 17 best-selling books, run multiple startups, and he's a marketing guru. He's probably considered the #1 marketing guru in the world right now. And he said, if you want to be the best in the world, make your world smaller. So you can be the best in the world. It doesn't mean you have to be better than everybody else. To be the best dentist in the world, for me, you don't have to be the best technically proficient dentist, because I haven't got anything major going on. But to be the best dentist in the world, for me, you need to be somewhere near my house and be good with nervous patients, because I hate going to the dentist. So everyone, if you find a particular niche, then you can actually be the best in the world for that niche. This is another quote I really like from Al Rees, the book by Al Rees and Laura Rees. The power of a brand is inversely proportional to its scope. So the bigger you try and make something more vague it is, the more pathetic the brand is and uninteresting. When people start out and they start their own business, whether it's an Amazon thing, or whether it's an online business or some sort of, or going freelance, what they typically do is they say, I will do anything for anybody because, subtext, I'm desperate. And you think that will work, but it doesn't work. It does the opposite, in fact. So as an example, I mentioned this program I run called the 30-Day Challenge. Actually, it's not running anymore, but I ran it 10 times, over 1,000 people. One of the participants, Saskia Nelson, who's this woman in the bottom left, she had this idea that she wanted to do something in photography. She had 30 days to start a business, so what was she going to do? She wasn't really clear when she went in. And she thought, what most people do when they start as a freelance photographer, because she just lost her job, in fact, is they go, I'll photograph anything. I'll photograph your baby, I'll photograph you, I'll photograph your product you want to sell, and your business, and your wedding, and whatever I can take. And then they wonder why they're struggling. What Saskia did instead is she said, actually, what's the thing I'm most excited about and what most passionate about? And she spent a long time online dating before she met her current partner, and she realized that people's photos online were terrible. So they were either inaccurate, from 10 years ago or something, or they were just really badly shot, or too perfect. They've been done in a studio, and so everyone looks like, we seem to be giving Americans a hard time tonight, but the way Americans sometimes do headshots, look like they've been just too overdone. So people were doing that in online dating. And so what she had was an idea, was to be the first dating profile photography business, dedicated business, and that she would photograph people in their natural environment, as it were. So if you're really into vintage clothes, she'd photograph you somewhere down Brick Lane in a vintage clothes shop. If you're really into cooking, she might photograph you, at some deli getting ingredients or cooking even. So whatever it might be. So you had these shots that told you something about somebody, but also were kind of casual and informal, but were good photographs as well. The result of this was absolutely crazy. So she ended up in every publication you can name. She ended up on the press. This is just her doing it initially. And after a while, she now has, I had lunch with her just this week actually, and she now has something like 10 photographers under her in multiple cities in the UK. She's also got some photographers in New York now, so she started up over there. So it's a business that's really working even now, and this is, I think it's 4 years later or something like that. And she's still getting press, and she's considered, a go-to person for general dating advice, in fact. So imagine how much press do you think she would have got if she said, I'm a photographer that does anything? Nothing, right? It's like, that's not interesting. So how do you super niche? How can you do this? Well, there's 3 primary ways. One is in terms of demographic or psychographic, i.e. who's the person you want to help, and be really specific about that. A demographic, if you've heard these, you might have heard these terms, I don't know. A demographic is one most people are more familiar with. It's like your gender, your how much money you have, what you do for a living, that kind of stuff, your age. In terms of companies, it's actually called firmographics. It's like size of company, industry they're in, and so on. Psychographics is really about your personality and your values. And this is actually much more important now. So you will find people who are really quite well off going to Aldi because they have a value which is, I really like good value, and I'm smart about what I buy. So I might buy the Apple iPhone, but I'll also buy Aldi baked beans because actually they're just as good, if not better, than Heinz, and they're really cheap, and I'm kind of, that makes me a smart person. So that's what psychographics are about. Second way to niche is to niche on functionality. Just do one specific thing really well. If you're doing a tech startup, don't try to compete with something that's enormous. I don't know what it would be, but like there are so many apps covering so many things. Instead, go and do one thing really, really well, and make it so good that people can't resist using it, and then you can expand from there. And the third one is to niche geographically. So perhaps you only work in a particular area, or you're the famous US brand of the UK, or I don't know what it would be, but you translate something that's working somewhere else, but bring it to another city. And the advantage of all this is that you're quicker to start, quicker to succeed, much, much better for getting word of mouth and PR opportunity. If you tell me you're a photographer and you do anything, I don't know when to refer you. I'm not going to say, hey, you should speak to whatever her name is, who's the photographer. But if you said, I'm the photographer who just does this, profile shots for business, which are kind of informal, and you show me them and you go, those are really good, then I know who to refer you to. And it also gives you an opportunity, if you niche down far enough, that you can end up creating an entirely new category, which is, in effect, if you think about dating profile photography, it's a subcategory of normal portrait photography. But by niching it down, it makes it something new, it invents a new category, and it positions Saskia as number one immediately. Who thinks they have a niche already that they want to describe for their business idea? Or it could be if you're doing a property thing, it could be a niche that you want to work with there. If you're thinking of Amazon, and that's one of the topics tonight with Michael. Anyone got an idea? I don't bite, I promise. Yes, Michael, you've got a niche.
Yeah, I think, in a funny way, once you start looking at the world that way, I think there are niches, there's just so many possible niches. The niche is the person you're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's becoming that way, yeah.
I said, imagine, I'm going to appeal to somebody who's in the early 30s, white guy, lives near London in the finance industry, and that's my target niche. And I say, are you fed up with X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
You can find them all around you. I just find it's a way of looking at the world.
Yeah, and it's particularly good though if you can find a niche that's not being serviced. So, so you found this particular kind of person, and then you find that they've got a particular problem that's not being covered by, other brands are just kind of missing them somehow and are not really focused on them. And that huge businesses come out of that as a result. This, by the way, is not a niche. When I ask people what their niche is, they'll often say things like women aged 30 to 50. That's everybody. That's not, the target audience is males and females age 0 and up. This is taking the piss, but it's kind of not far off. So you need to be brave enough to say this is really what I'm talking about. If it's not a particular person, then it can be a particular functionality. So I thought Buffer is a really great app. I pay £10 a month for it. Has anyone ever heard of Buffer? It's really handy. If you want to do social media, yeah, it's really simple. It's buffer.com. I think it started by a British guy actually, but I'm not sure where it's based now. But the idea was, let's take the scheduling feature of social media and just make it easy and really fluid. So what you do is, when you're looking through all this stuff and you're going, oh, that would be cool, I want to share that on Twitter, on that, and Twitter, on that, and Twitter. Instead of just going share, 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 and then you spraying out 10 updates at 9 a.m. and then nothing for the rest of the day, what does it just automatically spreads it out over the day for you. So you can load up 20 different things and it will run over the next 3 days. And when it started, all it did was that. You couldn't control when, it just decided for you, and it was all on Twitter. And that was enough. They made money. In fact, it was turning a profit within about 6 weeks. Oh no, they made their first money within 6 weeks because they were so specific. And now, of course, it does every social media. You can customize when it goes out. You can do all sorts of other things. So Peter Thiel, who is famous, well, he's multiple things, starting PayPal with Elon Musk and a few others. He's a multi-billionaire. He's quite an unusual and original thinker. He shocked Silicon Valley by coming out as a fan of Donald Trump when pretty much everybody else in Silicon Valley doesn't like him. And but what he says is, even though he's only interested in billion-dollar startups, he says you still dominate a small niche and scale up from there toward your ambitious long-term vision. So what do you want to niche on? Well, one of the things is you want to make sure you're going to super niche on something that excites you. So you've got to find a way, so when you focus on a particular need that's out there in the world, a particular kind of person, that's the kind of person you'd enjoy spending time with. If if you choose a niche of city bankers and you don't really like hanging out with city bankers because you're a kind of person, I don't know what, does the opposite of what city bankers do, then don't choose that as your niche. You want to choose something else. And this is Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, the most respected startup incubator in the world, says it's hard to do a really good job on anything you don't think about in the shower. So you want a topic for your business, which when you wake up in the morning, you read about because you're excited, and even if you weren't trying to make money, you'd be reading about it. To give an example, I had a client called Chris Weil, but he changed his name to Wolfgang Weil because he thought it was cooler. And he came to me like quite a long time ago, back in 2005, and he said he was trying to decide between multiple ideas about what he was going to do. And one of them was about historical photos. And he said that ever since he was a child, he wanted to go back in time. And that, of course, is impossible, right? So we rule out our impossible dreams. And then he realized that there were a certain kind of historical photo that made it feel like he was time traveling. And what he did is he started collecting, he was already collecting those. He started putting them on a blog called retronaut.com. And he just did this for a while. And suddenly it just kind of went viral and went completely crazy. So there's something about these photos where it makes you feel like it's not just history you're looking at. It's like, is that current? And it gives you a glimpse into the culture of the time. This is apparently how to spot a unreliable husband. So it's not just like, oh, there's something that happened 100 years ago which doesn't interest me. It's like, oh, this is the culture of then that I can get a glimpse of right now. This is a picture from back of stage of Marilyn Monroe performing it during the Korean War, I think it was. So just that feeling like you were there at the gig. It's a very simple thing, but it became really popular, and he ended up doing an exclusive licensing deal with Mashable.com, where he is, or was until recently, I think he's going his own way now, the most shared content on Mashable, which is basically a website of shareable content. And he got a book deal with National Geographic, and a couple of other book deals after that. So that was by niching on a very specific thing he was passionate about. If you don't niche, this is what you look like. You kind of say, "Oh, do anything for anybody." It's not attractive. I find that I love this example. This is I saw this driving through Tottenham once, and this is a shop called the Shaken Brow. They do milkshakes and eyebrow shaping. I don't know quite how those two things go together. They also do cakes made to order. And all I can think of, well, first of all, it sounds like a German lager, the Shaken Brow. But secondly, all I can think of is sort of eyebrow clippings in a milkshake when I see those two things together. And funnily enough, it's never very busy whenever I drive past. And perhaps because of that, they thought they'd expand, and it became the Shaken Brow DVD Zone and Pan Center. So now you can get your eyebrows done, buy a milkshake, get the pan, which is the Indian sweet or savory thing, and pick up your DVDs as well, if anyone's still using DVDs. So, and it's still not very busy, unfortunately. So don't be the Shaken Brow Center. Definitely don't be this guy. This would be really bad. Septic tanks pumped, swimming pools filled, not same truck. Again, some things don't go together, and it's much better to niche into one of those. Another thing that's going to help you to create something that has no competition is to be willing to turn some people off, like the Marmite effect. everyone knows the Marmite effect, right? You either love it or hate it. That was the marketing angle of Marmite recently. For those who are Australian, it's Vegemite. And it's, if you can be willing to say, I won't work with these people, or make such a strong statement that those people basically just instantly turn off or even just dislike you, then you may be onto something really powerful. As long as you believe in what you're doing, not just for the sake of it. A friend of mine, John Parkin, wrote a book called Fuck It, The Ultimate Spiritual Way. I hope swearing is okay here. Yeah. And you would think that having the F word in the title of your book would be a hindrance to making sales. He sold hundreds of thousands of copies, I think 500,000 copies. That is a huge number. And he was already running a retreat center in Italy with his wife, Gaia, you can see in the top left. And he still runs Fuck It retreats. I've been on them, they're really good. And he has the Barefoot Doctor, if anyone knows him, and some other people who visit and run courses. And he's been, it's just been a huge success. So by making a strong statement, what he was basically saying was, saying the F word is the Western equivalent of the Eastern concept of non-attachment. So if you go, no, fuck it, then you're no longer attached to your outcome. And there's quite a lot of depth to it when you go on the retreat. So it's sound stuff. So the second thing is think big, start small. And what I mean by this is it can seem very overwhelming to do something that's entirely original, or in fact to start any business. It can seem like a very big task, but also a very risky thing. This is why I am a fan. I wrote an entire book, Screw Work, Break Free, about this, why you need to start small and then grow it. And so people forget that you can start small things and actually they get bigger. They seem to think that you have to go all in, possibly because, Tony Robbins has shouted in their face that they have to take massive action and do something big, and like he's a scary dude, so you just do what Tony says. But in actual fact, if you start something small and prove it works, particularly if you're trying to do something innovative, you've got to prove it works before you scale it up, because otherwise the risk is too big. So you might recognize this chap, delightful man, Mr. Zuckerberg. This is him back in 2004, is that what it was? When he wrote Facebook for the first time. And he wrote it in 30 days. And the first version of Facebook is really basic. I'll show you a bit later. That was his minimum viable product. He just wanted something that could go online where you could see people's pictures and send each other messages. That was basically all you could do. You could see their profile, and that was it. That was his minimum viable product. So has anyone heard this term MVP? So a few people have heard it. So it's from Lean Startup. What's the minimum version of a thing that you can launch that proves that your idea is viable? And so Christian did that when he did his first Escape the Rat Race meeting. I thought that was a really brilliant example. He goes, okay, I'm going to announce this meetup. I have no idea who's going to come. And that's the bit that's scary. That's the scariest bit, if anything. And then you find out that quite a few people come along, and then you go, okay, apparently people like this idea of escaping the rat race. Who knew? And then we can do more of them. But if he hadn't done the first one, or if he'd maybe called it something else and it hadn't quite resonated, then he would have found out before he bought a building and spent £10,000 on branding or something. And we forget that you can start with one. If you want to be freelance, if you want to be a consultant, you want to be a coach, you start with one client. If you want to run events, you can start with one event. If you want to write a book, you can start with one blog post. This is the first book ever sold on Amazon by, which is called Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies. It's really snappy. Bought by a guy called, Jesus, I can't see anything out of my glasses. Wainwright. And so this is the first person. This is a picture of the book on his own living room floor, because he realized that this was kind of quite significant when he found out that he was the first customer. And Amazon never forgot him. They actually named a building after him. So on the Amazon campus in Silicon Valley, wherever it is, they have the Wainwright building, which is named after that chap. And this is what their website looked like when it first went live. So we all think we need to have the perfect website. And I do think, you can, I'm a fan of doing little and doing less, but doing it better. So do a one-page website that looks really good, but remember that you can iterate, you can add things on afterwards. And that's what Amazon did. This was cutting edge back in the 90s. But of course, they kept changing it. They change it every single day. Facebook, similarly, they've gone through this process of playing it out. So this is the original version called The Facebook. It says a Mark Zuckerberg production at the bottom. It no longer says that. And this is the new version. I took a screenshot today that bears almost no relation whatsoever to the original thing. It's not even called the same name anymore or the same URL. So we think that we have to have everything ready. You don't. This is a great one. Air, Bed and Breakfast. These two students, they were design students. There was a design conference coming to San Francisco. They thought, why don't we lash together this website, get an airbed, rent out an airbed in our room and make some money and let other people do it. And they did it and it kind of worked. And they said, we'll make people breakfast and we'll call it AirBNB, Air, Bed and Breakfast. And they went with this idea to this brilliant startup incubator, Y Combinator, and they described it. And the guy who runs it, Paul Graham, said, you're insane. Who's going to want to rent out a blow-up bed in their own lounge to a complete stranger? But what he said was, you two are so impressive, you've got this off the ground, you've made some money, that I'm going to invest in you and we'll see where it goes. And now it's worth, of course, they're Airbnb.com, and they have 2 million listings. I think it's gone up since then, and a $30 billion valuation. Because, of course, it changed. No one's really renting out an airbed anymore. In fact, I didn't even know what air meant. I don't know if anyone else, but that's where it comes from. It comes from airbeds. So what I write about in my in Screw Up Break Free is the concept of the play cycle. You've got to be willing to act, reflect, and adapt. What that means is put something out into the world, see what happens and see what people make of it, and then adapt what you're doing and put it out again. Just like this is very similar to software release cycle, where you put out a version and then people go, oh, that's quite good, but can you now add this feature? And then you add that in and you release it and people go, oh, that's good, but now we want to do this. And you just go on forever and it basically never ends. So you accept that everything is a draft. And there are so many amazing businesses that started this way without any kind of business plan whatsoever. Craig Newmark was in a job in IT. He was 40 or something when he thought, I'll start emailing people a list of events that are on in the Bay Area, art and tech events. And it became so popular that it turned into a website, and that became Craigslist.com. And well, the rest is history. He's one of the most visited sites in the world. His personal worth is estimated to be in the hundreds of millions. Does anyone know who this guy is? Matt Mullenweg? He's the creator of WordPress. So WordPress powers tens of millions of websites around the world. And what he said is, every moment you're working on something without it being in the public, it's actually dying, deprived of the oxygen of the real world. So I want anyone who's had an idea and hasn't done anything with it for 6 months, I'm trying to kind of push you to actually do something and realize that version 1 is better than version none, as somebody once said. So if you're sitting there thinking you can work it out and get it all sussed and then put it out and everything will be fine, I've got bad news for you, because that's not going to happen. You've got to be willing to not think it out, but play it out. I've shown him already. Where did that come from? So, I want to prove to you that you can start almost anything in 30 days, particularly if you're willing to modify what you're doing. Who's got an idea for a business that they don't think they can start in 30 days? You need a load of money, you need to quit your job, buy premises, do a massive technical build, whatever it is. If it's property, that might be the one snag, but I'll refer to someone else on the property thing. But has anyone got an idea like that? Can I ask, first of all, who has already started something and has started something, whether it's on the side or whether it's already making money? Who started something already? You have, yeah. So about 3 of you. And the rest of you, have you decided what you want to, put your hand up if you still haven't decided what you're going to do. Okay, 3 or 4. So the rest of you know what you're going to do, but you haven't started. So can I ask why? Was anybody willing to own up to that? I won't make you feel bad, I promise. Yeah? Was that you? No. Is there anybody who will admit that they've got an idea and they haven't started on it yet?
We're going to have to pick some people.
Come on.
We had a chat about something, didn't we? Go on.
Well, what do you want me to tell you?
What's your idea?
For a merch company.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I've got someone who's prepared to be a sleeping partner,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm doing all the work. I'm just procrastinating because I'm not sure if I want to run a business.
You're not sure if you want to run a business. What do you do at the moment?
I am working as a band manager's assistant.
Ah, okay.
So I prefer being on that side of things to actually running a business.
Being on the
Working
outside of
with people
things.
rather than, admin
Well, okay, so
and
yes. Well, it may be that you're a people person, and then what you need to do is team up with somebody else. But if you've got, what is the idea? Can you tell us a bit about it?
I don't want to give it away in case somebody.
But here's the thing. I want to challenge you on that. Ideas are pretty much worthless. There's a rare exception, but ideas in themselves are really not that special. It's the ability to execute, and it's your particular. Even if you told me the idea, like I think in my first book I wrote about it. It's a bit old now, but the example of Big Brother. And like, imagine somebody goes, I've got this idea for a show, and he had a bunch of completely ordinary people, and he put them in a house, and you don't let them out, and then you film everything for 24 hours a day. It's like, who thinks that's a good show? It's a stupid idea. But it made the guy, Peter Basil, get a millionaire. And the reason why is because in his head there was more to it than that, and also he had the ability to execute on it as well. So he had TV knowledge. So I would say that does anyone have a secret, an idea that they think they should keep secret because someone might steal it? Is anyone else willing to admit to that? Yes, you have.
Jason. Do you want to say what it is?
Go on, dare.
I was going to write training for parents about child protection, but specialist,
Right.
really specialist
Yeah.
stuff where I'm teaching from the perspective of an adult that doesn't understand technology.
Yeah.
And rather than teach them technology, teach them what the kids are doing,
Yeah.
so they know what they're doing rather than saying, oh, I know what my kid's doing online.
You see, so this is a good example because you have I get the sense that all we're getting is like 1% of what's in your head. But it's normal because you're immersed in this. You thought a lot about it. Even if you tell us that idea, first of all, it's very unlikely someone's going to run off and do it. But secondly, even if they did, they don't have everything else that's in your brain, which is your vision. Like I've got a vision to do a course that's about dating, which I know, which I'm really bad at. But I'm going to bring experts in who are good at it. But I'm not worried about saying that because there are loads of dating courses out there. But I don't think any of them will be. Even if I described how I do it, it wouldn't matter that much because it's how we actually do it in the delivery of it that matters. So how you're going to create that course is way beyond. There's much more depth to it than just your idea. And I would say this. If you've got an idea and the only thing you bring to the idea is the idea itself, you shouldn't do it. You have to have some sort of skill or contacts or value or industry knowledge or whatever it might be to come to an idea. Because if you don't have any competitive advantage. Then an idea is stealable. So, and the simple way of trying your clothing line out, your label, whatever it was, or merch as you call it, is to just create one thing. So like what's the best thing you can think of out of your merch range that will really work, and just do that. And if you find you're just hating it, don't do anymore. But meanwhile, you've sold like 100 bags or 100 shirts or whatever it is, and it was quite interesting and you learned something. And so does that seem feasible for you? Yeah, I think it'd be good. Bring it along next time, we'll have a look. So the final thing is to make something people want. That's a radical idea, isn't it? So rather than, it's not enough for us just to be excited about what we're doing, other people have to be excited about it. And what that means is, there's this classic phrase from advertising, enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind, which we need to create something that other people need or want. I know that seems blindingly obvious, but you wouldn't believe, that's basically the fundamental problem with most people who start a business that never gets off the ground. Assuming you have some ability in the area you've chosen, it'll be because you haven't, there's no desire, or at least you haven't described it well enough for people to understand. T. Harv Eker said, solving a problem is the most powerful version of a need or want. If people have a problem, if they have a pain, if they have a discomfort around something, then you can sell them a solution. And T. Harv Eker says, an entrepreneur is someone who solves problems at a profit, which I think is just such a great, succinct summary that sums it all up for me. So you might have heard the phrase, sell to the pain. That can be a minor pain. It can be boredom, frustration, or discomfort. It can be a major one, like anxious, being stressed, being fed up. It could even be physical pain. Or comparative pain. So it's sort of, there are solutions out there, but they're too expensive, or they're too high end, or they're too low end. Whatever it might be, it's not working for you, and that's irritating. You know, when Steve Jobs brought out the iPhone, he did it because there were plenty of smartphones around at the time. They were all crap, absolutely crap. So I know because I bought some of them. So he created the world's first decent smartphone. One of the ways to find problems to solve is to choose an organic idea. This is again Paul Graham from Y Combinator. What's missing or broken in your daily life? Sometimes if you just ask that question, you'll get immediate answers. And so this is what led to AirBNB that he funded, became worth $30 billion. And many other things. You know, Mark Zuckerberg was interested in connecting with people and interested in social experiments. And that's how he came up with Facebook. From my own experience, it's a client of mine called Jodie Day, and she did this program, a 30-day challenge, a few years ago, and she followed the kind of guidelines I give to create Gateway Women. And this is now a movement with something like 2 million people involved around the world. It's for women who haven't had children, for childless women, not by choice, i.e. some women don't want to have children, but for those who did and it didn't happen for whatever reason, it can be very difficult. And also, childless women can feel marginalised because it's kind of a mum-friendly world, and a lot of people assume you have a family. So she wanted to do something for these people. She was training as a psychotherapist. She wrote a blog post about her own experience as a childless woman, and I think she went along to a networking event a bit like this and offered to give a talk, and then it all went bananas because she wrote this. Somebody saw this post. She met a journalist who then shared this post. That kind of went viral, and she ended up writing for The Guardian, and now she's had a book of a major publisher, which is #1 in the infertility section on Amazon. She's makes a full-time living out of this thing. She's been quoted in every single paper you can imagine. She's the go-to expert on life as a childless woman. And yeah, she's fantastic, really. And it started with a blog post, going to a meeting and saying, can I talk? So that's what you can do in 30 days. So no matter how big your vision is, you can start it straight away. And in order to find your, like, what's the thing, why are people going to pay me for whatever it is I'm going to do? I think of it like a makeover. There's a before and there's an after. I found this picture somewhere on the internet. Before tutoring and after tutoring. What people are paying for is the transition from before to after, so unhappy child to happy child. How you actually deliver it is not that important. So people often, when they start a business or say they do a freelancing or consulting, they talk a lot about how they do it and how they work. And people aren't that interested, except in order to believe that you can do what you've promised. What they're interested in is how you take them from the before, where they have some kind of problem, to the after, where they're a happy person. Another way of putting this is sell something already on their to-do lists. A friend of mine, Sophie Boss, runs an organization called Beyond Chocolate, and she used to, it's helping women to have a better relationship with food, stop yo-yo dieting and stop hating their bodies, which unfortunately society kind of encourages women to do. And she's written a couple of books that have done really well with her sister, Audrey here. And when she first started out, she described it as, in the terms I just said, of helping women have a better relationship with food. Unfortunately, no one really knows what that means outside of the psychotherapy circles. What people really want to do is they want to get away from a problem, which is either I'm sick of being on this dieting treadmill, or I'm sick of hating myself, I'm sick of having no clothes that fit, those kind of things. And once she changed her messaging, it made a massive difference to her success. So I'll do this, let's do a little exercise. In order to think about, in terms of problems that you solve, this is a format to answer the question, what do you do? So you say, I help, and you insert the people or the market you help, who, and you describe the problem they have. So I might say, I help, I haven't thought about this in advance. I help creative people who, well, one of the things I do actually, let me think of the second niche, which is I help people who already work for themselves and are tired of feeling like everyone doesn't see what's different about them. So that's one of the things I do with people. Does anyone already work for themselves, or want to? Can anyone describe their idea in this format of I help this kind of person with this kind of problem? Anyone brave enough to try?
Yeah.
Go on
I'll
then.
give an example. I help frustrated employees who want to learn how to generate additional income streams.
I like it, but you've almost, yes, you sort of switched it around. So frustrated employees is the target market. What you need to do, though, is keep it entirely in the negative, entirely about their pain at the moment. So you said to learn.
So who want to escape the rat race?
No, because you're still talking about a want. We're talking about the away from.
Who hate their boss.
Who hate their boss. So you could say, I work with frustrated people, frustrated employees who are tired of commuting, stupid bosses, irritating co-workers, and being trapped in the 9 to 5. Right? So then, the reason why that's so powerful, because you're completely talking about their situation and not where they want to be, is because if you get it right, it's like mind reading. Like when you describe it, you go, oh my God, he's just described my life. Does anybody relate to my description of what he was saying, of what I was saying? Yeah, some people. The important thing is that we tend to assume we know what people want. I recommend that you don't assume you know what people want. This is Calvin and Hobbes. So the little kid saying, has a sign that says, a swift kick in the butt, $1. How's business? Terrible. That's hard to believe. I can't understand it. Everybody I know needs what I'm selling. And this is actually what a lot of people do. They think like everybody needs this thing. It's like, yeah, but unless they know they need it, you can't sell it to them. So much better is to do proper market research, and that means actually talking to people. That means stuff like talking to them about them and their situation and not about you. It means doing things like getting in a room with your target customer. It means go see companies and ask them, what are your problems right now? What are your needs? And if you have followers on any kind of social media or on email, then you can just ask them and go, some version of no surveys. So don't send surveys to people who don't know you yet. It's just irritating. So sometimes people go, I'm designing a business. Would you fill in this, 150-step survey? And you go like, well, no. But if you go and talk to them and go like, if someone says to me, John, I want to be a financial advisor. What do you find most difficult and irritating about the world of getting financial help? I go, well, bloody tedious forms I have to fill in and I can't bear doing. That would be one of them. So when you get that information, you can address that with a particular solution. But don't send me a survey. What's your number one headache in this area right now? That's the question you need to ask people. If you can do that and you get a clear answer, then you can solve it and you can make money out of it. And the result is when you do something that people really want and they know they want it, then you get this kind of reaction. Shut up and take my money. And that's the actual key to having a business that really works. So even though you created something that is totally unique in the way I've been describing, by making sure it's focused on something that's a real need, you can actually have a business that works right from the off. So that's it. I'm going to end there. Should we do Q&A now, or should we wait for the, what do you think?
Yeah.
Maybe let's do a couple of questions,
Yeah,
maybe.
let's take a couple of questions
Yeah.
now, because what we're going to do, obviously, break out into our little sessions in a moment. But has anyone just got a quick question whilst we've got John? Yes, please.
I
Yeah.
didn't get the point. Sorry. In a slide you
Yeah.
did, I help people and market. I couldn't realize the difference between people and market.
Right.
Like,
No, I
because
said,
people are the market.
okay, so the format, by the way, to get these slides, if you go to literally getmyslides.com is my website, and you put in your name and email, you'll get a copy sent to you immediately. The bots will sort it out for you. The format of that thing was, I help person or market. So a market might be like a particular kind of
Oh,
business.
it's like or, not.
Yes,
and.
it's or.
Okay.
Two, and then it's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay. I'm sure there will be when we all huddle round. But thank you, John. Can we have a round of
Yes.
applause, please, for John?